keep that passage closed for centuries. 'Cause I can take it anymore. Forgetting what I'm fighting for.
Hey, everybody. It's Kim Love Jones here tonight. And this is a special thought-provoking Thursday. I want to introduce to you all my wonderful, and amazing friends, my brothers from Hempstead. The first one I'm going to be introducing to you is Timothy Benston. He is a Harvard University graduate with his BA. He also has his MA in communications from the University of Pennsylvania. He's a healthcare and social activist, a documentary photographer for the Black Lives Movement in Philadelphia, PA. He is currently residing in Brooklyn, but he also is a true son of Hempstead. Um, I am so excited tonight to bring my brother, my friend, since I don't even know when, I don't even know how old we was, Timothy Benston to the stage. Timothy Benston we are going to talk politics tonight, y'all, just so y'all know. We want to talk about Kamala Harris. We want to talk about Project 2025. We want to talk about the things that matter to us right now, the things that are going on politically. We want to talk about Joe Biden. We want to talk about it all. And I have none other than Timothy Benston. And I'm going to bring up my other brother, Tyrone Johnson, who is absolutely amazing. I absolutely love him. He is another true son of Hempstead. He has his BA in politics and economics from SUNY Old Westbury. He is married to his childhood sweetheart for 30 years, Kim Johnson. He's a father of two, Courtney and Sydney, and he's a managing director and senior investment advisor at Wells Fargo. He has 36 years, y'all, of banking experience, and he is also a member of Kappa Alpha Phi. And he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, y'all. I had to put that part in there. I love y'all so much, and I'm bringing him up here, and I am clapping. I am clapping because I think that you guys are so amazing and so dope. So we are going to kind of just jump like into this. Y'all know that I am a certified relationship coach, and this is not my thing. This is not my cup of tea, but I am a political news junkie, and that is my confession. I watch the news on a 24-hour cycle. I sleep with it on, listening to it. And I said this to Tyrone earlier. This is not my jam in the public arena. These are private discussions that I have, but I think that there is too much at stake. There is too much at stake with this November election coming up and what's about to take place in the United States. And I wanted the two men that I knew personally to be able to discuss this and tell people, what's going on, like inform me. So I'm going to be really interviewing tonight. I'm really not going to be giving my personal opinion too much. I might interject here and there, but I really just want to interview y'all and see what y'all think about it, because y'all are the best and the brightest as far as I'm concerned in my circle of friends.
Well, thank you. Generous. Get on and hang out with y'all folks.
Y'all got this thing. Go ahead.
I'm no expert either, but I think that started to become aware, strangely enough, of politics in 1980 after Ronald Reagan. And I was young. Talking about, I go back, I was 14 years old when Ronald Reagan, 14 turning 15 when Ronald Reagan came into power. And what I knew about that, or what I remember about that, is growing up in Hempstead, I just remember in 1980, that my community began to change. See, in the community that we lived in, you know, the delicatessen owner was an African American. The entrepreneurs,
Mm.
hairdressers, they were African American. You know, the deli, Mr. Edwards store, if you lived on the Heights, Mr. Edwards store, my parents would get credit. We had credit from the store, you know.
Yeah.
It was that
Yeah.
kind of community. We were in that tight-knit community, and you begin to see things change with the conservative movement, at least for me, in 1980. Hempstead had been a sort of a working class community, and then all of a sudden you start to see it change. We go from a violent, drug, gun infested, businesses leaving, more business being pushed out to Garden City, Roosevelt Field, leaving our community. So there was
Yeah.
something about that began to get me engaged. And so
Wow.
it's a period of time when I start to come of age. You come of age in the 80s. You know, I'm a Hempstead alumni, 1983. Go on to college, and again, my life is starting to change as I'm moving into college. I'm seeing my community change right in front of me.
Yeah.
It's the leaders, and that's what
Mhm.
got me involved in it, or at least started to pay attention.
Wow. Wow.
I,
Wow.
was-
And
I
what
think I,
about you, Tim?
I think I could agree with that. I think the changes happened in the 80s, mostly because when we talk about the rise of Reagan or the emergence of Reagan, that's when, I think it's part of a longer conservative project, which was to undermine public schools. So things started to change then. And at that point, when Reagan comes along, we start seeing, the elimination of certain things like arts programs, music, all of that. They started taking all of that out of the schools, right? And suburban schools in particular had to rely on mostly their tax bases. So in Hempstead, with all the businesses disappearing, there's not, the schools start to suffer, because you don't get as much money anymore. The tax base is dwindling. So I started to notice things then, but it really kicked in the gear for me, high gear, probably when I got to college, and
Mm-hmm.
I became much more aware of my class position than anything else. And
Wow.
of course, race, but now class. Because when I went to college, mostly all white school, I had never seen or been introduced to the culture of wealth that framed everything about my school at the time. So while I certainly didn't think I was poor, I didn't realize that till I got to college, and I'm like, holy crap, But yeah, so I starting to see how things rolled out, and it just made me much more politically conscious. And I'm like, nah, this can't be, this can't be. And every time I would come home, it seemed like Hempstead was getting worse, because at that point, crack started, overwhelming.
Running amok. Yeah.
The village was empty. Remember the Saturdays was the time to go to the village when we was kids.
Right.
You go shopping, you go to the movies or whatever. You didn't have to leave Hempstead to go. You could shop in the village.
Right.
Things started
Yes.
to change. You had to go to Jamaica Avenue or go to Roosevelt Field or go to Manhattan 42nd Street. But I was like, when I was a kid, man, you went to Saturday was the day to go to the village,
Yes.
And we were shopping or get whatever. Roosevelt Field was a treat, but everything we needed was right there in the village. And again, when I was coming home from school, everything changed.
Yeah. And I think because I think that sometimes we can become cynical, right? So you get around, each election cycle, you start to hear this is the most important election of your lifetime, right? You start to hear that
Right.
over and over and over again. And in your lot, it's not changing. And you don't understand why it's not changing. So in most cases, our community has been a community that we don't seem to get engaged until we're at the presidential level, until we're in a big presidential election. And it starts and your local assemblymen, your local state senators, your school boards. That's where it starts. And for years and years and years and years, we're not engaged. I used to hear at Hempstead that the parents you'll find more parents at the football game than you'll have at the parent teachers conference.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
and that wasn't
Right.
just that was in all our communities
Mhm.
that like me across the country.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, resources were being diverted away from our communities.
Mhm.
Yes.
This election that we're in now is, I think it bubbled up because we have such a man, Donald Trump, in this election.
Mm.
And for me, the biggest problem I'm having with all of this is, forget if you're Republican or Democrat for me, but it's just the normalization of a man that is crass and as vile as Donald Trump is. And
Yes.
that for me is like the biggest heartburn I'm having. He's a man that actually took an oath, right? For whatever it is, he took an oath to say that he would defend the country against foreign and domestic terrorists.
Yes.
And
Yes.
leads an insurrection against our country. In fact, he tried to have his own vice president killed. And then we look the other way. It's like,
Tyrone, he is a terrorist. I'm sorry, he is a terrorist. He is a terrorist. So how do you defend against yourself? Because he is a terrorist.
Absolutely. And that's the thing for me, is like when I hear people say, well, you know, we liked his policies. And that's what I ask. What were the policies?
What policy? I mean, during
Right.
the only sort of I guess policy move that he made was during his administration. Of course, it didn't benefit us, but during his administration, through that tax cut that made white people or rich people more wealthy, this is the first time that we witnessed the greatest transfer of wealth from working class and middle class families to the top 1% because of that tax cut that he passed, you know. And that was the only thing that he did, you know. And like I said, it didn't benefit us, you know. People voted for that. And this is the reason why we are dealing and experiencing the inflation that we are experiencing now, and why everything seems to be so doggone expensive, you know.
Well,
but I want to take it back just a little bit more to talk about Tyrone. It's a little bit, for me, it goes a little bit deeper about the normalization of this man who's a crook. So the emergence or the election of Trump the very first time is in reaction to the fact that we had a black president.
Absolutely.
And the thing is that this is not only just a backlash, but this is the country saying, well, damn, if we could elect, excuse my language, if we could elect a nigga, we can elect anybody.
Exactly.
You know, and so it was no respect, you know, for the Obama administration. And this is a country now, this is where we are, because this country is so afraid of having a multiracial democracy, it will burn its own house down before it will concede to a person of color sitting in the White House.
Well,
and so that's why we're dealing with, you know, the backlash that you're going to see with Kamala Harris.
Let's take it back just a little further. So if we're having this conversation, is that America, every time in this history of this country with African Americans, anytime that the American government has had an opportunity to do right by us, there's always been backlash. I.e., during the emancipation, Black folks made some of the fastest inroads when we were left to our own devices, when we were given the same opportunities. Now, remember, during emancipation, we created our own colleges. We created our own communities. We were getting elected to state houses and Congress and the Senate.
First black governor.
And then
Louisiana.
Jim Crow comes in. There's this backlash from Jim Crow. They pull out soldiers in the South.
Yeah.
They pull them out. They tell African Americans, you can't defend yourself. We don't get a chance to vote again legally until 1965, 100 years later, right? So you go through that. You go through World War I, when we wanted to show ourselves approved. We got a chance to fight. We came back. They were killing and lynching Africans. African American men would disappear. If they showed up in their uniform, they were killed.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes on and on. 1919, you can come back. You have Tulsa. You have I live here in Georgia. You have a town, the Lake Lanier, which is one of the biggest lakes, man-made lakes in the country. There's several towns like that across the country that were flooded. These were Black communities, Central Park, Black communities. And again, when you don't have political say and you don't control your narrative, the federal government hasn't done right by us. I was down in, just changing it just a second, but I was in Beaufort a couple of weeks ago. And we did this tour in these big antebellum houses.
Beaufort what?
Beaufort, South Carolina. So Beaufort, St. Helena Island. This is St. Helena Island, that whole Hilton Head, Charleston area. 2/3 of Africans came through there. So that area is our Ellis Island, that part of the country. But as I'm looking around at these huge, beautiful, stately mansions, I realized at that moment that each one of those houses were built by my ancestors. And guess what? They didn't get paid a dime.
Nope.
Right.
That free labor built the South and built the wealth of this country. Again, when they just freed us and said, you know what, go to your own devices, do the best you can. And you would think that poor whites would be in the same lot with us, but they're not. They're not. No. And then you can forward that now. If you look at some of the poorest places in the country. In fact, if you start at the poorest places and start from 50 and work your way up, the poorest places in the country are all in the South. It starts in the South, all controlled by red states. They have the lowest life expectancy, the highest dropout rates, highest age pregnancies. I mean, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. But yet these people are never questioned. They continue to vote against their own interests year after year.
That blows my mind. That blows my mind.
Well, that's because the thing is that they are seduced by the illusion of white supremacy.
Absolutely.
So the idea is that they would rather cling to the illusion of white privilege than to go with somebody who doesn't look like them, who could probably offer them a better lot. But they're seduced by the fact that, hey, they're seduced by whiteness, and that is what it is.
And listen, I happen to be in a profession where I've been blessed. I do well financially. I do well. I can remember having a conversation with my father, and we were just talking about income, and he says, "Son, I didn't make that in my lifetime. In the kind of money that I make." In 6 months. And so I'm blessed and I'm thankful. So the tax cuts did help me, but it's bigger than that for me. It's the social, it's about my daughters. It's about my daughters having the same opportunity that my daughters are not denied opportunity because they're female, because they're Black, because whatever circumstances there are. And that's what this election is about. And so when people are cynical about it and go, Trump's going to win, it doesn't matter. He's not going to win if you don't vote for him or if you doubt, So let's be clear.
I want to interject. Yeah. I hear a lot of African-American people, especially men, against Kamala Harris.
Yes.
And they're saying that she incarcerated hundreds of thousands of men in California. That's how ridiculous it is. And I wanted y'all take on that. I wanted y'all to give me your take on that, because we know about the white supremacy. We know about, Trump and his foolishness, and we'll come back to that. But I want your take on what you think Kamala Harris did in San Francisco as a top cop.
You want to take that, Tim?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I think that, her thing was about, addressing the crime issues in San Francisco and addressing the crime issues at large in California, right? I'm not sure still, because what nobody else is also talking about are the diversion courts that she created, the diversion of the drug programs, drug programs that she created, like none of that gets talked about, right?
Exactly.
So what we want to do is focus on this narrative that she was the top.
So Tim, I would say
she was exercising this program of mass incarceration. What was that?
A lot of people don't know what you mean when you talk about those diversion programs.
Right.
See, they don't know.
Talk about that. Let's talk about that, Tim.
So a diversion program is simple. It's like in order to avoid, a defendant, sending a defendant, to prison, you go to a program that may help you with your, drug issues. You get counseling, you get therapy, you have all of these wraparound services, to avoid jail, to avoid prison, right? Because we know that incarceration is incredibly disruptive, especially to a Black person, incredibly disruptive. So the idea is that, she was trying to address, the underlying issue of crime, of drugs, which was driving crime. So this wasn't about like her being top cop and necessarily wanting to push this project of mass incarceration. This was really about trying to save and reduce crimes in certain neighborhoods, but at the same time, understanding that the underlying issue in crime was drugs. And I mean, again, that doesn't get talked about enough because we need to make her out to be the evil, Black woman, that people need her to,
Exactly. And that number turns out to be not hundreds of thousands.
Right.
The number turns out to be what I've read is somewhere around 1,100, and of those 1,100, there were only 45 men incarcerated, and we don't know the demographics of the 45. So it's only so we don't know if there were 30 Black men, if there were 10 Black men. We don't know what that number is. So, so that's just been another thing that the media has been able to run with, the narrative of that, and I'm hoping that unlike Hillary, Kamala will push back. I think some of the mistakes that Hillary Clinton did was she was trying to show that she was tough, rather than just face it head on. I want to believe that if Hillary had said, here are my emails, my husband cheated on me. You know what? We're like every other couple. We go through issues, but you hit that. Kamala needs to deal with it and get it ahead of this. And don't let this thing build up. Address it, So, but I think that again, it's been a narrative that's been running amok, and I think over the last couple of years, a lot of this information, the truth of the information has come out to dispel it, and so make no bones about this. For me, I don't love Kamala Harris. What's it? I didn't love Joe Biden, but I do know that. So you can fix policy. See, policy can be fixed and corrected. You can't fix what Donald Trump is about to put us under. That is, for me, we've got to avoid that. We may not have a democracy when he's done.
Right.
And so people are so enthralled about race and misogynistic thoughts of views that they're overlooking the big picture. And like this man only ran to stay out of prison.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
It's not about the country.
That's
it's about
it.
him.
And that's why they don't have any policy prescriptions. They don't have an agenda other than they just made up some stuff. In the Project 47 or whatever it's being called, they just made up some stuff. Very recently. But again, this election is not about policy. It's not about none of that. This election is whether or not you want to be able to have rights in the next 4 years. That's all it is.
That's it.
And that America as we know it, do we want, are we ready to, go down that slippery slope? Listen, the Republicans have played the long game. They have seized the courts, right? They've already done that. They have a 6-3 majority. This is the first time in all of our lifetimes that we have seen women lose a fundamental right. The very first time, 50 years. So there's that. This is the time. Then during our lifetime, we also seen the rollback of affirmative action, right? So they're already telling you how we are moving forward. So the question is, you can spend all this time in the world talking about Kamala Harris and how much you hate her and how much she incarcerated and this person and her stance on Israel. But if you're not careful, in the next 4 years, you won't even have a say. The economy won't even matter.
So
You know what I'm saying? Because you won't even have rights. You won't have workplace protections.
Exactly.
None of that.
Democrats,
you won't have the freedom from discrimination in housing. You won't have any of that. No protections. None.
Right. Democrats have to take the attitude that let's win the race, and then we can deal with the other stuff. Let's
That's all.
win.
Okay, so there was a few things that y'all said. I feel like I need my pen and my paper because I got to write down little questions that I want to interject and throw in here because this is so dope, right? You mentioned it's something called Agenda 47, and then it's something called the Project 2025. We're gonna circle back to Biden, and we're gonna circle back to the Supreme Court and why all of this matters, right? So tell me what you guys know. Hey, Brother Allen, I see you. Hey, everybody, I see y'all watching. Tell me what you guys know about Project 2025 and how that is going to affect us as a people. Can we break that down? I'm gonna bring out my notepad because I need this for myself. Hello, somebody. Okay, Project 2025 and how it's going to affect us.
I'll admit I have not read all 900. And so what I do know about Project 2025 is that the conservative and the far right heritage group wants to implement policies. Now, granted, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do that, to implement a lot of the things that they want to do, that they're proposing to do, if they don't have the Congress. If they don't have the Congress and the Senate, they can't implement a lot of these things. So that's why it's important to get out and to continue to vote down ballot. But some of the things that they're proposing that are uneasy, such as Trump putting in his operatives to take over the education department. Things like immunity for the police that are being implemented. So it's a ton of conservative policies that essentially are policies that are not good for all communities. They work for a segment of the country, the 1%, possibly. So even poor whites, if they had any sense, they would understand that this Project 25 doesn't work for them either. So they've got to get board with it.
What about the abolishment of education? They want to get rid of.
Let me just back up for a second too. Also, so Project 20. So I'm in a Project 2025 working group with some folks that we do political stuff together. So we're going through it, and it's a lot. So I'll say this much. So the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, which has also given Trump, did all of the vetting for the Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump appointed. They're the ones that drafted this. And what this is supposed to be is a full conservative makeup of the federal government if Trump was elected, right? So the idea is that he would install, his senior advisors, and then they would begin the process to remake the federal government in the image of Project 2025. And basically, it is this policy, a set of policy prescriptions really aimed at trying to inject just some cultural, white Christian conservative cultural values in our system. It is to abolish the U.S. Department of Education. It is to abolish Health and Human Services, because they want to call that now the Department of Life. They want to remake
labor law,
labor law. They also want to they are reconsidering birthright citizenship, which has these long implications, because birthright citizenship was, anybody who has a baby in the U.S., the baby is a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So the idea is that you're under the belief that immigrants are coming here and they're having children, and therefore that's why they're able to stay. But birthright citizenship really came about as part of the 14th Amendment when African Americans were emancipated.
But that's what
And, you
Yep.
know, and so the idea that I'm thinking is you getting rid of birthright citizenship, there's no telling how far they want to go with that.
Yes. Yes.
they want to move 10 million citizens out of the country immediately.
Right. Mass deportations.
How do you do that?
Not talking about how they're going to fund it, but mass deportations, all these dreamers, all of these people they want to get rid of. And I swear, I tell people all the time, my naturalized U.S. citizen friends, I don't think it will stop there either. Just because you got a green card doesn't necessarily mean you are safe either.
Right.
Because if we start down this road, there's no looking back. This is essentially 1930s Weimar Republic Germany. This is just before Hitler took over. So my thing is that we need to really pay attention to it. So I know it's 900 pages, but to Joy Reid's credit, she's been going through it and digesting it as kind of a Cliff Notes version on her show every day. So you can definitely check her out. And there's some other resources where people are going on and getting like the smaller versions of it. But it's a playbook. It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare.
This election turnout will be the determining factor in this election. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
You have Donald Trump has a base. He has a core base that will never leave him. The Democratic Party base happens to be African American women, hands down. That's their base, and
their most faithful base, right?
That's their most faithful base.
They
get out, they work, and they almost shot themselves in the foot if they tried to remove Kamala Harris out of the picture. So it's going to come down to base. I got a strong feeling that the Democratic base, African American women as a whole, were engaged, because you don't raise $126 million in 2 days, 3 days, whatever that. Just don't. And that came from grassroots folks. I've seen in some of the polls that Kamala Harris is up, but I jump into a lot of these different conservative sites too. In some of the swing states, I like to get in and see exactly what's been said there. So it does give me some concern when I look at Wisconsin and places like Pennsylvania and places like Michigan. See, the Republicans aren't necessarily interested in you coming across the line to vote for them. What they want you to do is not to vote.
Right.
I love to see it.
We don't want you to vote. We just want you to stay home. We want you so fed up that you don't think you have a chance.
Also, if you don't stay home, what we're going to try to do is suppress your vote.
Yes.
We're going to try our best to cheat.
Yes.
But we go into the courts. Like they already have tried, like they're going to go to court to try to stop Kamala Harris from being named to the top of the Democratic ticket. I don't even understand how they have legal standing on that. So it'll be fascinating to see how that turns out. But that's to delay the process.
Yes.
Which is what which they're going to be good at.
So
but this is going to come down to these swing states, and in these swing states, 100,000 people will make that determination of whether or not we win or lose. That's it's just a handful of votes at the end of the day.
That's
so even though our votes might be secured, the effort that we should be making is ensuring that the people in those swing states see things the way we do. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia. It's 6 of them, 6 swing states. Minnesota. Wisconsin,
Michigan,
Pennsylvania, North Carolina is toss up now. Nevada is in the mix. Nevada and Arizona.
Yep.
Arizona, my girlfriend G, she just said that. She said that the 2025 playbook is not just for Donald Trump, but it is for any Republican president who takes office. And I think that is something that we need to play, because they setting this thing up like this is how we're going to take back our country. This is how we're going to stop abortion. This is how we're going to stop women's rights, health rights, and all of these things. So yeah, this is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal.
Well,
my theory is this: if the Democrats win, the Republicans are going to be out of power for a generation. They're going to have to go back and reinvent themselves. They're going to have to go back to traditional conservatism, because they're going to realize that Trumpism doesn't win. It doesn't win, And the thing is, they're going to, because I think I'm one of the few people, I'm very confident. I was confident that he was going to lose to Biden. I'm even doubly confident that he's going to lose to Kamala Harris. The question is, though, can we get the House and the Senate on top of that? That's what it needs to be.
Can we talk about that?
Can
we talk about that? Can we talk about the House and the Senate for a minute, guys? Can we talk about the importance?
We can.
Okay, Tyrone. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say what you got.
In a normal cycle, what happens is during elections in this country, if you go back and look at election cycles, when the country feels like we've moved too far left or too far right, as a whole, we are a moderate country. Whether that's moderate left or moderate right, I'm not 100% sure. The country with Donald Trump has moved so far right. They tried to pull us so far right. Joe Biden's presidency comes in and moves us closer to the center. Not quite, because we still have those progressives in the middle of it.
Yes.
This is not a normal cycle, though, because when you start throwing in race and gender, you're getting to see, in my mind, the worst of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Worst of who this country is. And unfortunately, it comes down to Black folk having to save democracy. It's on our back.
Yes.
When we sit out, and that's what happened in 2016. If the city of Philadelphia comes out strong, Atlanta comes out, Fulton County, Atlanta comes out strong, Detroit, Michigan comes out strong, Milwaukee, Wisconsin comes out strong. Hillary Clinton is your president in 2016. Those cities, Black people stayed home. Now, I'm not putting the blame on Black folks, but they stayed home, and white women voted for Donald Trump.
It was black women who supported Hillary. But you're right. 2016. That was it. I was stunned at that election.
I was too. Wow. Because
Hillary had it in the bag. I was like, and then it just all fell apart in the end. And then James Comey did his stunt. So that was the end of that. But
but it doesn't matter, because I will never in my life understand how grabbing women by the vagina did not end his candidacy.
No.
That's like, in my head, like, all respect, everything went out the window for men. Now, okay, I'm gonna sidebar, but not super sidebar. There was this thing going around the internet, and y'all probably didn't see it. Would a woman want to be trapped in the woods with a man or a bear? Right? Y'all know I'm a relationship coach. You know I talk about that stuff, right? White women were choosing the bear. White women were choosing the bear. Every woman started choosing the bear. Most women chose the bear. I won't say 100% of the women chose it, because you cannot trust what a man would do. You already know what a bear is going to do. Here's the thing that boggles my mind, and has always boggled my mind about Trump, is that women actually voted for him after he said, you can do anything you want. You can grab him by the...
Yeah.
When he brought Bill Clinton's accusers to the debate with him and Hillary, when he literally was standing up close to her right? As she was speaking with the microphone, he was like within her personal space, like he was trying to consume her or intimidate her as she was talking to the people at the debate. If people did not recognize the different things that they saw Donald Trump doing during that time as being a predator, right? I don't know how all of these women, white or otherwise, voted
Because
for him.
the media was able to build a narrative around Hillary Clinton that she could not be trusted. And they put this whole crime bill on Hillary. They put it on her lap. And
Right. And it had to do more with Bill than anything.
she
Right.
did fight it back. And all she had, I mean, her people gave her a lot of bad advice. She simply needed to just lay out, I'm a human being. You know, my husband and we've had issues like hundreds of thousands of other relationships, but we figured out a way to work it out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's just
Right.
done that. She's done that rather than being quiet, because it looked suspicious at that point that you were doing something nefarious. As I said earlier, emails. There was nothing in the email. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yes.
And she held out Donald Trump not showing his tax returns. She was playing that game. You didn't have that luxury by this time, Hillary. So I think the whole point is, and I don't want to sound racist here, but white women can't be trusted. I'm
Right.
sorry.
I was going to say the same thing. No, I was going to say the same thing. And it is because, and I'll say this, you know, there's a voting block, but I'll also say this, that historically speaking, you know, you do have progressive white women who believe in their independence, but you do have those white women who want to be protected, right? Who want to be protected by white men, who want to give up everything because they want their homes and they want their kids and they want their suburbs, and they don't have to deal with nobody else. They don't have to make any decisions. You know, this is the mistress of the plantation. This is what we're seeing, you know, and so she is willing to give up all her power to be protected by a white man. And that's why white women voted for Donald Trump in the percentages that they did. That's my take on it.
And his numbers have not changed all that much. They did change in the suburbs in 2020. But what you're seeing is that those numbers are going back up in spite of him writing a check to a porn star to protect himself. Because I don't know if it had made a difference if it had come out right after the video of him grabbing women. If so, it was around that time he did this to protect himself from that information.
Right.
So what we find is that white women simply abandon the cause of sisters. They abandon us. But on the same token, if I fast forward,
yeah,
the same foolishness today, such as Donald Trump gave me the stimmy. Are you serious? We got to get.
Oh yes.
Now, and so we can have a conversation around why you even had a stimmy. Why was there a need for a stimmy? It's because
Right.
Donald mismanaged a pandemic. Now, what leaders do is this. Leaders lead. And what he did was, in the middle of a pandemic, because he was watching his polls, he would get up and call those, and this is why I was going to Facebook jail, because I was calling them out as he was having these press conferences, lying, trying to protect his poll numbers. He was looking at poll numbers and saw that his numbers were going down as people were dying. So rather than people would have given him grace if he'd gotten up and said, hey, what I'm going to do is turn this over to the doctors and the scientists, because that's not what I do, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Instead, he was trying to cover it. And then what he did was he divided, should you wear a mask or not wear a mask? So it's mask wearing versus the non-mask wearers. It's vaccinated versus the non-vaccinated.
Right.
This is not a time to add division in the country. So Donald Trump likes to get up and people, they don't fact check him. He gets in. Any president that steps in, the first year at least, the very first year of your presidency is really a carryover from the last guy's presidency. Like Obama didn't get the kind of Donald Trump got. Donald Trump rode in on Obama's economy. Obama had a growing economy.
Yes.
Talking about he lowered unemployment for Black folks. When Obama stepped in the office, unemployment for African Americans was somewhere in the neighborhood of around 19%. When Donald Trump came to office, unemployment was ballpark of around 6% for Black people. So it went from 19 to 6. Obama is the one that lowered anybody. Trump lowered it from somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 6 to somewhere around 4, maybe. I think he had gotten to maybe 5. I think he'd gotten it to 5. And on his way out, Black unemployment had risen, so again, up to 19%. So, I mean, we got to be honest about what he's doing. And Trump, again, it was the Congress that said, we've got to get these stimulus checks out to these folks. Because if we don't get these stimulus checks out, if we don't get them, we're going to be evicted from their houses. Businesses are going to be permanently closed. We've got to be able to put cash back into the economy. What people don't also know is there was a couple things happening. In the summer of 2019, if you all remember, there was a ship stuck in the Suez Canal coming from China. It was stuck. So you got a ton of goods on it.
Yes.
Now all of a sudden, we get this pandemic. In the middle of the pandemic now, you got a strike going on the shores. In Oakland, in Baltimore, in New York, you got can't even understand the goods they have. Now you get a shutdown in the economy. You have nobody to take the goods off of the ships. Inflation is created by too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's how you create inflation. So you had a lot of money pumped in, and all of a sudden, and I remember this like yesterday, because I remember going into the grocery store and there was no meat. I'd never seen that before. It was like a third world country. There was no meat in the grocery store. It was like, what's going on? Because they couldn't get it off the ships. They couldn't get it. There was nothing running. People weren't working. The country was shut down.
Truck drivers weren't working, nothing. Right. I remember.
Comes in on that. Now you have corporations that took advantage of it also. They jacked their prices up because they knew they could. There was cash that was out there. They knew they could take advantage of it. They bumped their prices up. Joe Biden is being faulted for this. We also ran, for you economy buffs, we were running at a zero base level interest rate level for years. The Fed was way behind the gun when they started raising rates. So in order to bring down inflation, the Fed had to raise rates. And we've never done this in our lifetime. The Fed raised rates unprecedentedly, causing the stock market to correct. It was the right thing to do. It's just the Fed moved too late, but they got it right. In the end, they were able to correct it. Joe Biden's policy infrastructure that put people back to work, his Build Back Better, which every Republican voted against.
Yes.
Those policies, Joe Biden's policies, Build Back Better, the drug bill, his lowering his prescription drug prices, expanding Medicaid, by the way, every Republican governor turned down the expansion of Medicaid. These are the things that help to bring down inflation. So the problem that we're having now is when merchandisers raise prices from $2 to $7, even though they stopped raising those prices, they left the prices at $7.
Yes.
They're making money.
They never go backwards.
They never went.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that we're having. And Joe Biden is being blamed for the failure of the last administration. Trump had one good year. Everything else, his failed policies. He added more money to the deficit. So when you have a slowing economy
than anybody else. Yeah.
So we gotta, because we coming up on an hour. Yeah. So I want to get to some other stuff, because I want y'all to talk about what they've done with affirmative action. And then after that, I want to talk about the Supreme Court. So Tim, you want to lead on that?
Sure. So I forgot the name of the court case. But this last administration have basically. So what ended up happening was let's kind of go back a little bit. Let's kind of go back to George Floyd, right? So after the public lynching, the very public lynching of George Floyd and all the protests, companies had decided that, they were exposed and they were shown by the fact that their executive levels, that the people in decision making power were not black, right? They were mostly all white folks. And these organizations had decided that we need to start diversifying our ranks. We need diversity, equity, and inclusion projects in our organizations so that we can have an organization that reflects the communities that we serve, or that our consumer needs to look like our consumer base, so on and so forth. And once again, as we pointed out, as we get sort of like we move progressively in the right direction in terms of social and economic policies, what ends up happening is a backlash. So what starts to bubble up through the Supreme Court are these cases dealing with race, affirmative action at Ivy League schools. My college happened to be one of the named plaintiffs in this last lawsuit. So basically, it came down to the fact the court ruled
University.
6-3, yes, 6-3, that colleges cannot, consider race as a factor in admitting student admissions. It was really screwed up. They can consider other factors, but race is just the one they can't consider.
Mm-hmm.
And what we start to see is as things move forward, then these companies that have promoted and promised, to have diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and projects and offices in their leadership, they started pulling them away. So now what happens is you're starting to see how this rolls out with Small Business Administration. So the government used to have loan programs for minority business owners, women business owners, and now all of that is vulnerable as well because of the Supreme Court decision. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that the greatest beneficiary of affirmative action was white women. From the moment that it was instituted in the late 60s, white women have benefited more from affirmative action than any other group, in the country. But the face of affirmative action was always Black people. We are undeserving, and that's the way they see it. So this is why this was easy to roll back. The other irony is that Clarence Thomas was also a huge beneficiary of affirmative action by going to Yale Law School, and that he was one of the main architects of rolling back affirmative action. So in other words, he got his, he didn't want nobody else to get theirs.
And when you put back in perspective, over the last 40 years, the most educated segment of the country are African American women are more degreed, more educated than any segment, any class, any group that you want to put. African Americans or African American women are running circles. These ladies are taking down PhDs at a higher rate, MBAs at a higher rate. They're graduating college. Listen, I just sat through 2 graduations here in the last few years. My oldest daughter, Sydney from Howard, my daughter, Courtney from Clark, Atlanta. And I would imagine that in those classes, it was probably easily in both 20, 30 to 1. Black women.
Yeah.
Black women.
Really?
It's not even close. It's not even close. It's not close. My point of me saying all that is here's a segment of women who have clearly changed sort of the landscape, and these folks are being marginalized or attempted to be marginalized. So that's what I have a big problem with, Black men, and actually I think that Black men are getting more of fault to the blame for the attack on the Black woman than I think we deserve. I think but Black men can certainly do better. Stacey Abrams doesn't win here in Georgia because Black men didn't step up for her. I don't care what they say. Period. They didn't step up for her.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of this landscape is changing. I think Kamala being at the head of the ticket does give me some concern that the rest of America is just not ready. And I said this before Joe Biden announced that he was going to step out of the race. The problem that they were having was Kamala would potentially head the ticket, and they boxed themselves in. There was no way they could bypass Kamala Harris and move her out and put two other candidates in. Although
Right.
I think that Nancy Pelosi was she was lobbying for Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. That's what that was about. But Joe Biden wasn't having it. Either I'm staying in the race. If I get out, y'all got to put Kamala on top of the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm staying in. And that's what it came down to. So I got a little bit, but my old.
No, so I get it. So the question was about affirmative action, and I guess in your own way you have answered it, because women are just educating themselves. They are more equipped, but they're saying that women are only getting the jobs because of affirmative action, and that's not true.
Right, and that's always going to be the narrative going forward. So they're already saying that Kamala Harris, they're calling her the DEI president, the DEI nominee, all of that. So you're going to hear like all of this. That always remember that our accomplishments or achievements are always going to be questioned, particularly when we measure up to mediocre white men. See, they get to celebrate mediocrity, whereas we don't, right? We always have to, again, be 3 times as great to be on par with them. White men always have the benefit of mediocrity. Let's just call it for what it is.
Absolutely.
Donald Trump is not even mediocre.
Right.
He's far less than that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have entered a phase in this country though where everything is anti-intellectual. We are anti-expertise because of the internet. So now everybody's an expert, or everybody gets to question experts. That's the shit, the language that I don't understand. So when going back to some of the points that Tyrone brought up, when the vaccines rolled out, all of the hesitancy, I have never met or knew so many people who were experts in vaccines. And some of these people I went to high school with, and I know damn well you didn't do well in biology. So I don't know how all of a sudden you are an expert in vaccinations. When you had to get vaccinated to even go to school. But here's the other thing. Trump got vaccinated and people still didn't trust the vaccine. You knew when he got COVID, he was going to take a vaccine. But, all those sheep that followed him, 1 million plus Americans died needlessly. And nobody talked about that.
Yes.
And that was under his watch. Because when COVID hit the U.S., I said to myself, if this man rescues us from this pandemic, he will get another 4 years in the White House. And he blew it.
Yes.
He blew it. But 1 million people died. 1 million plus people died in the process. And here we are now still debating whether or not vaccines are good for us or not. When that's all that's how we've been able to live as long as we have to begin with.
Imagine if Donald Trump, after the public lynching of George Floyd, Donald Trump calls a press conference and says that this will never happen again. And because of this, we're going to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But he couldn't do it because he's a racist.
Right.
Now, if he had embraced this COVID, just got out of the way. He walks. He walks it. But because of the management of that, and because he couldn't bring himself to say, he didn't see George Floyd as a human being.
Right.
He just couldn't do it. And then his supporters, his base, he's the mouthpiece of that base. But as president, you got to rise above that. You got to be. And so if he does that, we don't have those riots in the summer. That summer, we don't have that. He gets elected again. He walks in. So it's just for the life of me, I don't understand why people follow this. So I want to be clear that he had nothing to do with the semi-check. Nothing.
Say it again. Say it again.
with that.
And,
And
you know, it's funny because he wanted to put his signature on those checks.
He
but
did,
couldn't.
and he did.
No. He signed the letter
yes,
that the checks came in. He couldn't sign it because the checks came from the U.S. Department of Treasury.
right.
Oh,
So he couldn't
okay.
sign it.
Okay.
But he sent a letter with them with his signature on it to give people the impression that this was something that he was doing.
In fact, he held it up.
Right.
That letter, that the right to they talk about. I mean, he's a great salesperson. They talk about the opportunity zones. I don't know if you all are familiar.
Can you, when you say that, Tyrone, you said he's a great salesperson.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's a great salesperson for a person who is educated about what's really happening out here.
Right.
I think that people are truly misinformed and they just don't know, because a lot of times people just aren't paying attention. He's a con man.
Well, yeah.
And a lot of people want to believe, because he was on The Apprentice, that he is somehow this amazing businessman that filed bankruptcy like how many times? Like he's a con man.
Yeah, the
Right?
only place,
New Yorkers.
the only place he didn't vote for him. The only places he's been successful is raising money during his campaign. People are raising money. He's able to raise
Give to him.
Right. To give to him based on hate and division and misinformation. So he's been able to capitalize on those things. I mean, listen, this man lost money in a casino. How do you lose? How do you lose money? The house never loses.
The house never loses.
Lost money on the airline. Everything that he actually got involved with, he lost money on. His dad bailed him out on every case. They keep saying,
okay,
no, he's not. He's not.
Right. Can we talk about, I want to get to the Supreme Court. I want to talk about the Supreme Court. So what do y'all think about stacking the Supreme Court? If we get, now I need to preface this with this, the Congress, the importance of a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate. And I want you guys to, because people don't realize, when they say all votes are local, it starts local first. So it's important to get our congressmen and women in order and get them to line up democratically, right? So, right, big D democratically, but then small d because we want the Democrats, right? Okay, so what do you think now about the Supreme Court and stacking the Supreme Court or changing the rules in the Supreme Court?
So I'm surprised. I'm just so surprised that it has gotten this far without some serious consideration around stacking the court earlier, right? Especially, around, I would have been thinking as we head towards Roe v. Wade, but I think that raises other problems. And I don't think that there is the courage, if you will, for Democrats to push, to vote for stacking the court, because they're afraid that if they ever lost power, the Republicans will come and do the same thing. And so that's kind of what it is. What the court needs, though, in all honesty, is some serious reform. Get rid of this whole lifetime membership stuff. It has outgrown its usefulness. And it's clear that without any sort of ethics,
and
any ethics, that they think they can run amok. So the challenge is going to be, you need to come up with some ethics reform and then term limits. As simple as that. Give them a 20-year term and they're done. That's it. That's it. That way it will take the politics out of it. It's ruined now. The court is ruined. The court is out of step with mainstream America. So it is doing something completely on its own that makes no sense. How do we get to a place where there are going to be exceptions for a president to do what he wants to do above the Constitution? In other words, everything that we've been taught about what the Constitution was has now been thrown out of the window.
Right.
So now there's exceptions. So I was telling somebody when there was that attempted assassination on Trump.
I don't know. I think somebody.
It would have been so cool if Biden could have said, "Well, yeah, I did it. I see him as a real threat to the U.S. Constitution. I took an oath to protect the Constitution. He's a real threat. So yeah, I tried to take him out."
SEAL Team 6, yes.
SEAL Team 6. And by the court's ruling, it would have been legal.
Yes.
Yes.
That makes no sense. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
None.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, but yeah, they're long, it's crazy. If the Democrat is elected, though, I think we got 2 that are going to be retiring, and I think Thomas is one.
Alito and Thomas.
Alito and Thomas. So that will give a Democratic president. That's if they don't try to stay on and be like, Ruth Bader.
They might.
But yeah, it's time for them to go. But they could also be, which is the other thing, and I know now there again isn't the courage for it, but they can also be impeached. They could be impeached.
So you see that AOC literally started the process to impeach them, right? Because she is having a fit about it. And I don't know why more people are not outraged at what is taking place with Thomas and Alito and also even John Roberts. Before they got these last 3 picks, right? John Roberts was conservative, but he wasn't over the top. Now, all of a sudden that they got, y'all know who I'm talking about. Don't make me recall names right now. All of a sudden, he is voting with them. He used to try to be a little even-handed. Right. So I'm like now, and he's not saying anything about what they're doing in the Supreme Court. And that's a problem. He's not pulling them back and saying, wait a minute, this is unethical. You can't accept money. Like, you can't pay for your mother's house.
Well, that court has lost all legitimacy. They're calling it really that this is Clarence Thomas's court. This is not Justice Roberts' court because he's not, he's just not there, and he has lost legitimacy. They thought that, he would have been the more moderate one to kind of mellow things out. But with a 6-3 majority, even if he agreed, with the left side of the court, it's still not enough, know.
And you've got to keep in mind that the lower benches, the next president will have an opportunity to put 46 new judges on the benches. That's important. Big deal. 46 lower judges will be appointed.
Yep.
During Donald Trump's administration, he had 53 judges that he actually appointed, lower court judges that he appointed. In addition to the 2 that he put, not one African American did he put on that bench. Right. Not one. So, people had really got to pay attention to the lower courts as well. What's happening? The lower courts, the smaller elections, your state assembly, your local mayor race. You've got all of it. The school boards,
all of it.
You've got, and you can't wait until the presidential elections. And so here we are, because a lot of people are very, very cynical about this election. Oh man, listen, I can't stand either party, either one of them. I wish we had a third, and I get it. But what we've got to do is win the race, and then you got to hold these people. You got to hold their feet to the fire, but you got to win. You can't. Kamala, I saw some interview today. They had asked her about reparations. Somebody asked her, "What's your black agenda?" And she couldn't come out and say, "Well, I got this black agenda." She can't. She's got to win. People got to understand. She's got to win.
Also, but here's the thing that frustrates me about, our folks. So, Tyrone, you bring up a good point, and I'm just going to phrase it in another way. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You got to get in there. You got to vote. You got to write the letters. You go to those people's offices. They have offices. They have constituent services. You go to their offices, make noise, make them known, ask them, go to their offices, here I go to my community board meetings, but in Hempstead, go to your trustee, the village board meetings. do those kind of things. They won't. The other thing is where, it drives me insane that people are getting most of their information from social media. Nobody want to pick up a newspaper and read it. Nobody wants to watch the news. They want to watch things that are going to confirm what they already know or what they already believe. And even then, they won't do that. I'm always surprised, and you'll see me say this on social media every now and then. Stop reposting memes as if they're information, because you don't know where that came
Where
from.
they got it from.
And the other thing is that the Russians have been really good with infiltrating U.S. social media, flooding it with false information, especially targeting Black folks, because they don't want us to vote, because they really want Trump to win, because they want to see the collapse of democracy. And I always tell people, how do you know this? Where do you get this information from?
Yes.
Sometimes I'm looking like a jerk, but I still say, I'm only saying this because don't do their work for them. Don't.
Exactly.
Right.
Which
you do your job.
Bring up a very good point. There's something running around on the internet that Starbucks was a major sponsor to the Heritage Group and
to the RNC.
And it's not true. It's a false rumor that's going around about Starbucks.
Yep.
Wow.
Again, that kind of stuff. And all you got to do is just go right to their site, do the research, and say, "Did y'all do this?" No.
Right.
We supplied coffee. That's what we did. We gave coffee, and we provided food for the convention, which is what we're going to do in Chicago next month for the Democrats. We're going to do the same.
Exactly.
Right.
So I urge my people. I say two things. Fine, if you don't trust the media, whatever. What I would strongly encourage you to do is there are media channels that are nonprofit, so they don't take money from ads or anything. Look at those. Go to Democracy Now. Go to C-SPAN. Go to I'm missing another one. But those are sources that I look at. When I don't need to see all the commercials. And PBS is another one.
Yes.
Like those three, like I look at all the time. Those kind of things. And I always check out C-SPAN because I want to see what's going on the congressional floor from time to time.
I do it every.
But, I look at I look at MSNBC and CNN from time to time, but I get away from them because I think that they're much more interested in their punditry versus telling.
Yes. Yes.
So I get out of the personalities. I need to see the story. And
yes.
So after a while, I'm like, I had enough of this, but I need to see. And I look at local news. Yep. News 12 and New York One News, and I still read a newspaper. So I'm always be involved, get my information that way. I don't trust social media.
I used to play a game with myself. You know how bad the traffic is here in Atlanta. If you haven't been here, our traffic is horrendous.
Yes.
So I used to leave my office, put on Fox Radio, and see just how long I could stay on and listen, because it was so crazy the misinformation coming out of there. It's like, and then the callers that would call in would just parrot, just the nonsense,
Yep.
and then I just had to turn it off. In fact, these last couple of weeks, I will tell you, and I'd be disingenuous if I didn't own up to this, but when they were pushing Joe Biden out, and all you kept was, the Democrats are doomed, it's over, Donald Trump is going. That I stopped watching the news. I couldn't.
Yep.
I couldn't.
Too.
It was taking my steam away from. I couldn't. I was a little depressed about it. My anxiety levels were up.
Yep, I did too, Ty. You're not the only one. I had to stop.
I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear that Joe Biden's slipping in the poll. I don't want to hear. I know this. So I'm back.
Can you tell me what you thought about the top Dems pushing Biden out? Like, how did you feel about that? Because we all knew he was old when he ran the first time. You know what I mean?
I posted it, how I felt about it, and oh my God, I got raked over the coals big time. And people were hitting me up in my inbox telling me, because they were so happy that he was gone. But I was kind of pissed about how it was done. And I was saying that what people didn't recognize was that this decision was made by the donor class. This
Yes.
decision was made by elite Democrats. We had no say in the matter. And that's what pissed me off. In other words, they're going to hold their money back if he doesn't resign. I don't think that's right. You know, and I'm saying this means that, in other words, my little $10 that I gave to the Democrat Party, don't, excuse my language, don't mean crap compared to big time donors. And then you get George Clooney taking out an op-ed in the New York Times. And you know, I'm saying now the media, and then the New York Times did their own editorial. And I'm saying, come on, New York Times put their editorial out before they even mentioned Trump should not be at the top of the Republican ticket. I'm like, Trump was the one in that debate. Trump totally disqualified himself, but y'all come out talking about Biden. I don't understand that. I would cancel my subscription to the New York Times.
There was no fact checking during the debate. It was, and I'm sure the look was stunned. Like Biden was looking like, and nobody's checking this guy.
How screaming!
More importantly, this is what I hate about party politics at this level, because you can't claim you want my vote and you want me to participate, but you got your big donors who got this money and they throwing it around, basically telling me that my vote in terms of the party doesn't matter. You know, because they ultimately get to decide. Now, not the election vote, but the party vote, you know.
Well,
and I hated that.
Ultimately what was happening is the night of that debate, it was so awful. Joe Biden was bad. Now, Donald Trump, in my mind, was equally as bad, from just the lying and never answering any questions.
Yes.
But I'm going to tell you, I sat here and I was deflated. I said, my God, we in trouble.
So was I, actually. I couldn't even.
I was too.
5 minutes in, I was done. I'm like, oh, I'm not watching this.
This is
It was painful. It was
torture.
Yeah, it was. It was terrible. I kept thinking maybe Joe was maybe he's going to grab his. So it held me there because I kept thinking maybe he would come. The big donors that night started reading the poll numbers. Now, what's interesting to me was, because I follow the polls, I read the polls, and and they're not always accurate. But what I noticed is that Donald Trump didn't necessarily leave with a big margin coming out of that. I mean, the polls didn't run away from Joe Biden. It was sort of a slow kind of leakage, because what you found is that the Republicans realized that if Donald Trump had a stronger opponent on the other side, he'd have got crushed. Because they weren't so happy with him either. Right. And then he compounded it in his address to the RNC last week. It was awful.
Yes.
So in this case, the Democrats, Joe Biden, I don't know if this was planned, but they waited until the RNC, and I think they wanted to see what the bump would be. And honestly, it wasn't a huge bump coming out of the RNC. Normally you get a 3-4 point bump coming out of your convention. They didn't get that.
Right.
And,
because everybody who's on Team Trump, we already know who they are, and he's not growing his base.
Yes.
Right.
So it's the what we saw was the numbers in the polling jumped up for Kamala because you had so many people who had resolved themselves to sit out. They just they were sitting out. And then what you're not seeing is, or what was not being reported on by the mainstream media. You got a ton of people not a ton, but there's a good 2 to 3% of the Republican Party that are these never Trumpers.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But they're not being polled.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're not being vocal, they're not being vocal because they don't want to risk.
I don't know
whatever base they have.
Because there are a lot of African Americans. To my surprise, I saw some polling the other day. It said that Donald Trump is polling 21% of African Americans.
I don't believe that.
I don't see the number either.
I believe that.
But to see that number, it's like,
that's huge.
Who are they?
Right.
But when you read the comments, as I was talking to you earlier, Kim, before we got online, I won't even mention the name. I won't even give him that space. But I was just reading, somebody from Hempstead that we all know, that every time there's something that's said about, 2025 or Donald Trump is this villain. So why does it matter? It's like, but I refuse to even get myself involved in it. I just, what you do, but it's a lot of people like that.
Yes.
People.
You know what I say to my son? I've always said this to my sons as they were growing up. And I think it's important to say to anybody that's listening or may listen on the replay, it's better to keep your mouth closed and look like a fool than to open your mouth and prove it. And so my sons, both of them will tell you to this day, my mother said, go research it. And before we had a computer in the house, we had encyclopedias. Now I know, like, we didn't always have the internet. Like we start up with the dial-up and all of that. But once we could look stuff up, and before we could look stuff up, we were going to the dictionary, we were looking up words, we were getting the definition, because we're not gonna have a comment. Don't ask me what it means, don't ask me how to spell it, go look it up. That was always, and so research is our friend. Right. And I get bothered because every time I have a conversation, it's almost like, for me, a private conversation, I'm like, you don't know. Okay, so wait. So do me a favor and go and look it up. Go to a reliable source, right? And then do your due diligence before you start doing the same thing you said, Tim. Before you start going around here, because you really feel a way about what you see happening out here, but you don't have the facts.
Right.
Half of the people, the first infrastructure bill that had been done in 5 years was done by Joe Biden, because Trump did not do anything concerning infrastructure. He kept saying, oh, it's infrastructure week, and there was never a bill signed. Now these Republicans like, oh no, we're not voting for it, but they accepted all of the money once it passed.
And they got, a lot of them were getting called out. We're getting called out on the news when they were standing in front of these huge construction projects with a big check, and the media go, but didn't you vote against that? And then there was nothing that they could say, But the other thing about Trump, which I think is interesting, is remember the mantra of repeal and replace?
Yes.
Yes.
Repeal and replace? Never happened. Never happened. Remember, he was going to get in the office and repeal and replace Obamacare in the same week. Never happened.
He did nothing.
John McCain gives a thumbs down and shut it down.
Yep. He sure did, didn't he?
Yeah.
Didn't he?
But
okay, so this is
what were they going to replace it with? They never talked about the replacement plan,
because they don't have anything on their agenda but to try to destroy everything that the Democrats have done.
Exactly.
It was like white lash because of Obama. You said it at the beginning of everything he did, we're going to try to destroy it. They don't have their own agenda. They just want to destroy everything that Obama did, and now everything that Joe Biden has done.
Well, and it goes. I can recall Donald Trump saying to President Obama during the Ebola breakout that if one American died in this country, you need to resign. Now, Obama came back and said, we're putting in health preventative measures because there's going to come a time in this country when we're going to have some airborne viruses and we're not going to be ready. And he had in place. Donald Trump, one of the first things he did when he got in the office was he
garbage. Yep.
Get out.
He had a pandemic playbook. Yep.
He had the playbook
because the models and the models said that there would possibly be a pandemic outbreak in about 4 years. Yeah. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. They didn't have a playbook to address it.
Okay, so this is what I want to do. I'm telling y'all, this is so dope. I am loving this. I'm loving it. This is what I want to do. I want y'all to come back. I want to do a part 2 of this. I really, really do. Because I think I usually don't do my platform. Y'all know what my platform is. It's love in relationships. This is not, but this is too important not to talk about. Mm-hmm. I need us to do a part 2 We might even stream it from Zoom because I need to see your whole face. And this and StreamYard is giving me a different vibe.
Okay.
But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. I need
Well, I think that at some point we need to, because you have people that if you're doing a part two, I think that if you're saying that you're voting for this in this race, why you're voting for him, I think lay out the case on what she's doing versus what the other side is doing or what they're proposing, and let's lay it out. Let's put a case out there. Let's in the words of Kamala Harris, let's prosecute this thing. Let's see exactly, and let's get some folks to come in and say, where you having heartburn? Where you having heartburn with this? Lower prescriptions. I mean,
Right.
because they're not the same. People say both of these parties are the same. They're not.
Nope.
These two are not the same. This is too for you to be on the sideline.
I tell people that all the time. Did my, when they was saying that, one party is the Democratic Party is the less of two evils. I'm like, well, can you name one piece of civil rights legislation the Republican Party has ever advanced? Not one. Not one.
No. And can you show at the rallies, at the Democratic rallies, if you can show me a Confederate flag or a Nazi flag flying around, then I'll give you that. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. And when you look around the crowd of a Democratic rally, there are a rainbow of colors of folks.
Always.
Always.
I'm looking forward to their convention. But I also asked them, can you name one Black person that the Republican Party supported as its nominee for president? You can't. What about a woman? You can't. You can't. There's never been a woman. It's always been white men.
And you know what I want to hear? I want to hear what y'all think about Tim Scott. We're not doing that tonight. I want to talk about, listen, when I tell y'all, I want to, because y'all, God forgive me, he is a coon. I mean, and he's not the only one, right? But we're not going to do it tonight because we're coming up on 1 hour and 30. And I want this to be bite-sized chunks that people can kind of sit through or listen to when they're driving in their car. Right. And like, I want to get some replay. I want to hear how people genuinely feel about what's going on. And I want to go in, I don't know what y'all availability, y'all going to hold on for a minute so we can have a quick discussion. And we're going to bring this thing right back because this is too important. Mm-hmm. We are, Tyrone, you said it. You said, and my everybody keeps saying this is the greatest. The greatest election ever, most important election in our lifetime, right? This really is. This really, really is the most important election ever.
Democracy is at stake here. It's serious, and people better wake up.
Yep.
You better wake up.
And also, we can't normalize this as a regular election. It's just not. It's anything but. So this is not even about policy. It's just not. It's whether you want a democracy or not. That's just it. That's the bottom line.
Got to be defeated because. There's somebody behind him, but you're right, Tim. The Democrat bench, my God, so deep.
Yep.
So we win this presidency. We are in the White House for a couple different cycles.
Yep.
A few cycles, because
and we need to.
Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
No. I was gonna say we gotta win the House and we gotta win the Senate.
Yes.
We have to in order to make Joe Manchin and what's her name? Christian Cinema. They literally stopped them from doing anything when the Dems did have the House.
Yeah.
Joe Manchin had the nerve to call the DNC to try to sidestep Kamala.
And then had the nerve to say he wouldn't be interested in being her vice president. I'm like, MF as if.
Yeah.
Right.
She really good. Like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
You just turncoat of them all. Get out of
Yeah.
here with that nonsense. You shouldn't even be interviewed at this point. You're so irrelevant.
Yeah.
He is. He really is. Guys, give me your final thoughts and we're going to wrap up. Don't y'all get off when we, what you call them, but give me your final thoughts. Tyrone, Tim, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll still say this is seriously the most consequential election probably since this country's founding. I think it's just that serious. And this is not about policy. Not at this point. We'll get the policy on the other side. But right now, it's whether or not you believe in a multiracial democracy and America's promise. That's all it is. That's all I got.
Well, I'm just going to piggyback on that. The same thing. This is certainly the most important election in my lifetime. Because this election, the way I see it, as I said to you earlier, Kim, it's not about me at this point. It's about my daughters. It's about that generation for me. It's about them, and it's about the generations that come after them. That election is that important to me. And we've got to be informed. We've got to engage, and we just got to support. We got to support Kamala Harris. We just have to do it. We have to be on board, and more forums like this. When we get a chance to engage our own communities, encourage people to get out, we need to do more. I'm all for it. If I can bring one or two people along with me, then I feel like we've accomplished something.
Yep.
Can everybody go out and I don't know in which way, it may be phone banks. People who are in Hempstead, Fred Brewington has the corridor account in Hempstead, and they do phone banking. I've worked down at his office before for different people from the Hempstead and Nassau County area. You know the gerrymandering that's going on out here in Nassau County, New York State, period. It's not just Nassau County. And for y'all who do not know, Bruce Blakeman was on stage, and I just have to say this real quick. He was on stage with Donald Trump talking about he's going to start a militia in Nassau County. We have got to understand what is at stake in a real way out here. And even if you cannot go and volunteer for Kamala Harris's campaign right here, if you can make a $3, a $5, a $7 donation to her campaign, do something to make a difference. I know we're tired. I know we're overworked. I know, but the reason why I came off of my square, outside of my comfort zone in a public forum, is because this is too important. And Tyrone, can I be honest? I'm not a great fan of Kamala either. Y'all pray for me. I'm not going to vote. Listen, I'm not saying I don't like her, because I do, right? I'm not mad about what she's doing. I'm not mad about her position. I think she's amazing. I'm just not her biggest fan. What I am a fan of is I am a fan of democracy. I am a fan of us being treated like we are important. I'm a fan of equal rights. I'm a fan of, even if you're an evangelical Christian, you got the word wrong, because it ain't telling you to do none of this hellish shit. Excuse my language, y'all. Ooh, I cursed on live. Ooh, it ain't telling you to do any of that. You understand what I'm saying? I don't care. You're not reading the right Bible. Real talk.
Exactly.
You're not reading the right
Can
Bible.
I add something else that's really consequential that came out, that was on the news today? To show you how important voting is in Nassau County. Do you know that so Nassau County is going through this thing about its water, and that all of the Republican community, or the communities, the Republican districts, they got their water repaired. The Democratic districts didn't. And they called Bruce Blakeman out on that. And he said it's because the Democratic districts did not complete their paperwork on time.
Wow.
Look that up. That just can't hit the news today. I heard it this morning on 1010 Wins. And I was like, this is, and I was like, he is such a snake. But this is what I mean. This is why, you have to be involved. This is not a spectator sport. You got to get it. This is affecting drinking water.
I can tell you, the men of Kappa Alpha Psi, all across the country, we are engaged. Now, I'm not going to tell you that we're a monolithic group and we're all voting for Kamala, because I've had some conversations and I had to put some threats on my page. Frat, family, or friend. Don't come on my page with some nonsense, because I'm blocking you. I don't want to hear it. But we are engaged for the most part. The Divine Nine, all of them are engaged, and we are strong. I mean, I think every organization probably comes with, at minimum, 150,000+ members. The Deltas, AKAs, are coming in there with 300,000. Women are engaged, the men are engaged, those contributions are engaged, and we're getting out in our communities. And this is more than, in my mind, just electing a Black person. It is clearly
right.
And it don't hurt.
We got to do some door knocking.
Yeah, it don't hurt that she brown either. So I own that one too.
Right.
It don't what?
That she's brown. You know, she a brown.
Absolutely. It don't. That don't. But and I can't wait for us to do this again, because we want to talk about that, how she's being received by other people. But listen, you guys, this was absolutely amazing. Thank you to everybody that watched. If you watch it on the replay, #replay. This was so dope and so amazing. And I want to know how to get better at interviewing people, because I'm not really that good, but I'm trying. Because I think. And I just want to say thank you to my brothers, Tim, Tyrone. You guys are awesome. And I'm telling you, in my immediacy, like, you guys are the smartest people that I know. Okay? The smartest people that I know.
Friends, Kim. You got to get some better friends. You got to get better circles.
That's what I say.
I got to get better friends. That's terrible. That is terrible. No, but you guys are so brilliant, and just, I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Sincerely. Thank you. Thank you.
See you next time, definitely.
Yes.
Future ahead of us, making memories. Our only hope is to forget and keep that passage closed for centuries. 'Cause I can take it anymore. Forgetting what I'm fighting.
I'm moving around.